The following is my opinion. You might not agree with my thoughts and opinions, nor do I really expect you to. So, if you can't handle opinion or honest thoughts about something you like, I recommend don't watch the rest of this video. But the choice is yours. Hello everyone, this is GSTE, and today I'm going to be reviewing Gamera Revenge of Iris. Now let's dive into it. The first thing we have is the plot. I'll say the plot isn't that bad. It kind of makes sense, mostly. Not to say I don't have problems with it, I'll get into that in a bit. But this movie did a good job of explaining what was happening and stuff throughout the movie. Even though it feels like they skipped some stuff and it doesn't exactly feel right. Like when the girl goes to the hospital, the main characters find people dead, and it's kind of hard to tell what happened exactly. They don't really explain it until the end, which it wasn't really even explained, but it was just kind of shown. It wasn't really told exactly. But you could obviously figure it out for yourself what happened, but it just kind of felt like a weird ending to the whole family thing when I thought that's what we were gonna build up in this story. And other than that, the movie is filled with kind of weird stuff that is just kind of creepy. Like, the first movie was a little weird, but this movie is just creepy. And not a really good monster movie kind of way. More like people creepiness. And that takes a huge part of the story up. And it can't really be ignored. Even if you tried. And this movie's explanation for Gamera's stomach fire thing is something called mana, which is supposedly supernatural power that is inside every living thing or something. And even though that kind of makes sense for just this movie, in the last movies, especially the first one, it was made clear Gamera absorbs plutonium, even electricity that they kind of subtly hinted at. And plutonium is a substance similar to uranium, and he also absorbs the fire from the explosions from the oil refinery and stuff like that. But now they want me to all of a sudden believe that he absorbs this supernatural thing, and that is how he gets his power. It just doesn't really make sense, and I don't really think that it fits into the three movies. I think it fits into the last one pretty good, but it doesn't fit into the whole, what they were going for with the whole three movies overall. And also the story kind of wants to make Gamera seem like he's a good guy. At the end with him saving the girl, and literally for no reason at all. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and it doesn't really make sense. Like, for literally the whole movie, Gamera was killing everyone. He had no mercy for anyone, killed hundreds of people. And just by Gamera being alive, he absorbs mana, and with there being less mana, more Gauss appear. So somehow that works. That's like, basically he's making things worse, he's killing people, trying to not make it worse. Or not even trying not to make it worse for the humans, because he doesn't really care about the humans, as he showed when he kills them. But somehow he doesn't kill the girl. He cares about the girl enough to risk his arm and basically everything just to save her. That doesn't really make sense, and I don't feel like it matches what they showed with Gamera. And that's completely different from what they showed in the last couple movies. The last couple movies, they showed him more to be like a, they showed him more to be of a good guy, and you don't want him to get attacked by the army. But in this case, I'm kind of like, yeah, they should probably get the army on him because he's just killing people. Because let's figure it out this way: if Gamera knew that there was a girl inside of Iris, wouldn't he know that there's people inside of buildings and stuff, and the people he's stepping on and stuff? It's just, yeah, Gamera needs to be shot down by the army. There's not really an excuse for it. Just like there's not an excuse for the 90s Godzilla, even though he has a son and stuff like that. The army needs to do their best to try and stop him so that he doesn't destroy any more cities. So yeah, if you're going to say that Gamera didn't know that the people were inside the buildings and the stuff he stepped on, yeah, he knew that there was a girl inside of Iris. So yeah, to me it just didn't seem right to have Gamera kill all these people and then risk everything to save the one girl. And you might say that the original Gamera did the same thing with a kid and then he killed loads of people, but there's a huge difference. The main difference was that this was a very easy choice for Gamera, the show Gamera, and didn't require any pain or physical struggle. And even later, Gamera doesn't care even a little bit about the kid when he's on the train car. But if you look at this Gamera, not only could he have let go of Iris and the girl inside so he could push Iris back and not have to cut off his arm. He didn't even have to cut off his arm, but we'll get into that later. But Iris also impaled his hand. So it seems way out of character for this Gamera to be doing this, and it seems more in character of something like later Showa Gamera to do. Not like the Heisei Gamera. Heisei Gamera is more of a dark Gamera that doesn't really care about human lives and is willing to put them at risk to complete his mission. Which is what he showed in this whole entire movie. So yeah, I don't like the sudden character change in Gamera. So taking into consideration that the mana thing was not consistent and didn't really make sense, and Gamera's role and how he was shown to be a hero when he is negatively affecting the Earth and the humans, it didn't make sense or feel right with the movie. But also considering that the overall plot was pretty good, you know, it made sense. It wasn't like the other one where I was like, what's going on in this movie? This one was like, yeah, I know what's going on in this movie. It's pretty weird, but I understand it. You know, I might not be like my personal preference of things that are weird like this. But overall, I think with the flaws and all, which are huge flaws, but I think it I think it deserves a 6 out of 10. Which is pretty impressive considering how the plot was for the other Gamera movies. Honestly, after rewatching it for like the third or fourth time, only for the plot, it made sense a lot of times, unlike the other movies where it doesn't make sense most of the time. But in this movie they actually showed where the monster comes from, and a sort of origin for it, which is what was lacking with the other two Gamera films. But overall pretty good. Not much else to say except some things that didn't really make sense at all, but they don't hurt the story as much as the mistakes in the other movies. Next we have characters. I will say I don't like the main character really much at all. They did a good job with making making you be able to get into the movie more and like that, but I just didn't like what I was getting into. I didn't like it. It wasn't an enjoyable experience. It's just the way this character is. At first I thought, her parents died from Gamera. Sure, she has a reason to want to kill Gamera. But having a giant monster, basically kill your whole family and lots of innocent people is just kind of way too far. And you might say, oh, GSTE, she's obviously doesn't know that Iris is killing all these people. And to that I will say, then why did a person read this, this girl's mind and then see Iris literally killing people? And still, even then, this girl's reaction was like she didn't care at all. And she is linked to Iris, so what Iris does, she knows what is happening, and it's the same thing with the girl in the first movie with Gamera. So yeah, I didn't really like her at all. In real life, she's probably, a wonderful person, but in this movie, I don't like her character. And so besides my huge problem with that character, I have some other problems. The girl is depressed and not really sympathetic at all, starting off in the movie. Then after she partially bonds with Iris, she becomes like a robot, and she is asleep for a lot of the time, or just standing there motionless. And then for like 3 minutes or more, every time they show her, it looks like she is having like a panic attack or something. It just looks weird. Then she goes back to looking like a robot. And then suddenly she says she is sorry at the end of the movie, when she realized she helped kill her family and basically everyone else. It still doesn't make me like this character though. Saying sorry isn't really enough a way to repay what happened, especially since she didn't really even care right before this. So yeah, I don't really like this character. She just doesn't have character. It's the lack of character that makes me not like this character. And you might think to yourselves, that sounds pretty horrible, so you're probably gonna rate it like a 2 or something. But you know what? That is not all the characters. We have some more. Again, this lady returns. She's kind of a good character, but she seems too formal for the movie for me, and I don't really know what purpose she has in the movie. But overall, pretty good character. But you know who makes this movie a little bit better by gracing it with his presence? This guy. Yep. Still don't know his name, but this guy is just such a good character and actor. He just adds life to the really bland characters.
ずーっとそげんしとったら腹も空いたろ。なあ、お前どうしたいってや？それだけ教えてくれんねん。
助けたい。
聞こえん。
平坂を助けたい。
よし、行こう。京都だ。
京都。
助けたいとならまず彼女のそばに行かな。あんこは京都におる。
ほんならあいつも京都に向かうかもしれん。
あいつって。
Too bad he wasn't really in the movie that much. But yeah, really good character right here. And definitely my favorite in the whole series. Next we have this kid. He's kind of an awkward character and isn't really interesting as a character. That's about it. You know, he has this knife thing that he wants to stab Iris with. Doesn't really do much either way. And I don't feel like the relationship with the girl led anywhere. His character didn't lead anywhere. It was basically where it started was where it ended. He's an awkward kid and the monster died and then they showed the aftermath and the kid's still the same. He didn't really evolve as a character. The girl's adopted family was pretty cool. I wish we could have seen that taken further because I was honestly invested in, a little bit intrigued by their relationship. And I thought both the family and the girl could grow as characters. But no, they just kill them off and they don't even show it. Like, come on. If you're gonna have a monster kill the main character's adopted family, you should at least probably show it. But they don't, and honestly it was kind of a letdown scene by seeing what they did with the characters. And like I said, I liked how it looked like the movie was going, but then they just have the family killed off screen, and it kind of just ruined the potential. So next we have, oh yeah, I almost forgot, this girl, or lady, I don't really know. It looks like she's an adult now, so I'll just say lady. I don't really know her name. I don't know any of the names. Yeah, I don't know any of the names. So yeah, we have this lady. She again shows up about 40 minutes into the movie, almost exactly like the last one. I feel like it's more connected here. It wasn't like literally out of nowhere like the other film. She talks about mana or something like that. Something about Gamera, the usual. But she's better than her previous appearances, but still not as good as before she touched the necklace. She's still a little bit bland, but decent enough. She isn't like a robot like the other films, and definitely not like the girl. She like, side by comparison, they show right here, she has a lot more energy and a lot more feeling than the girl that they literally show in this one scene. She's like, they're shaking her and it's like there's nothing going on in her head. Next we have this lady. I don't really have much to say except she is really weird, and I don't like her at all, in really any way. Now we have this guy, who is even weirder and creepier. I don't like him at all either, but he takes up a good portion of the movie. And the same thing with the weird lady. It's like, why? Why can't you just add the good characters, the good actor? You have the really good actor, I don't know his name, but I'll show his picture or video here. Why couldn't you just have him? So it wasn't that good, but it wasn't that bad. With all the weird characters, the not good characters, even the main character was worse than the first Heisei Gamera main character, which was the girl. The girl in that movie was better than this movie. So at most I can give it a 5 out of 10. Since I don't like the main character, this lady, and this kid are kind of bland. And definitely that guy. That guy's just creepy. This lady is decent enough of a character, but these two creepy people take up a lot of time and make it really hard to watch this film. So just using that would probably be actually like a 3 or 4 out of 10 at most. But this guy right here makes the movie a lot more enjoyable, even though he doesn't really have much of a part in the movie. and is completely forgotten about at the end. Literally. They don't even show him. The last scene they show him is him screaming Gamera and Iris are in the buildings and stuff. That's the last scene they see him. I was like, why? Why do you have to show these other characters that aren't interesting? Why not show his character, or at least he makes it to that scene where the rest of the characters are somehow. But no, they just end it, and he's nowhere to be found. So at most, it's going to be a 5 out of 10. But at least we have some other scenes. We have, what do we have after this? We have designs, I think, right? Yes, we have designs. The designs of the buildings look very good and realistic, but they never actually have a good angle from above, or something showing the buildings, like they do with most Godzilla films. And the buildings still make Gamera look small, and they block most of the buildings with fire when they zoom out, which is cool, maybe like one time, kind of like Shin Godzilla, but they do it every single time. It just kind of gets annoying, and it doesn't make me feel like Gamera is in a city, since I don't see any buildings next to Gamera from far away, like this shot from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Or really any scene from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I always saw the buildings in those ones from above the ground, not ground level, because they only want to show one or two buildings that they did a really good job on. They show all the buildings, they show all the scenery in the background. They put a lot of effort into it. They put a lot of effort into this, but the ground angle, it just doesn't show the beauty and the stuff of the city landscape. But besides that, the miniatures look very good. Probably one of the best, except the Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. Those ones look the best. Now for Iris. The small Iris looks kinda cool. I don't like the tentacles, and it makes him seem creepy and weird, especially when he tries to grab the girl. Now for adult Iris. I don't really like his design. I can't really tell where his arms or his legs are. And unlike the other iconic Gamera designs like Giron, Gauss, Virus, maybe even Baragon, even Heisei Gauss, I was able to see the wings, the legs. They all have designs that feel better to me, since I look at them and I could see their whole body easily. Even most complicated monsters like Bylante and Destroya. One main thing that makes them feel like alive creatures or monsters is actually having a mouth, a face, they have eyes, they have, teeth, they have everything that, a face should have to be recognizable. But both Iris and Legion, now thinking about back to the last movie, it's very hard to tell their faces, since they don't really have a mouth or even really good face. It's just kind of like they have like a weapon for their face. It just doesn't really look that good. But besides that, I don't really like Iris's design, and it just looks really weird to me. I think a lot that has to do with it is that they don't have any good shots of Iris, and mostly it is just his waist and up that is seen for basically the entire film. Next we have Gamera's design. His flying form looks alright. You guys already know I don't like the smoke that hides his arms that are supposed to come out like the original Gamera. But again, they used a transition to cover everything up. I don't really like his design here. It is better than the last Gamera designs, but his arms are still way too wide, and his shell seems way too big. His arms needed to be thinner, I think, smaller a little bit, or maybe they're the right size, I don't know. His neck needed to be longer. He needed not to be so wide, and his shell not needed to be so wide too. And to be honest, I don't really like his face that much, as I think the eye is too small and too close to the front of his face, and his tusks are pointed too much to the front of his face also. Here's what I would like Gamera to look like more. But his overall design is okay, I guess. Gauss's design is alright. I don't really like it, but designs are alright, I guess. They're a lot better than the last Gauss design. But do you know what Gamera should have looked like in this film? What I would have actually liked. But they actually chose the worst suit instead of choosing the better one, which doesn't really make sense to me. In a flashback from, the girl's flashback or whatever, I don't really know her name. She remembers Gamera, And Gamera looks awesome right there. It looks like the best. I'd say that one design right there rivals the original one, for me at least. Like for you guys, you'd probably say, oh, all the designs, they rival them. But for this one rivals that one. And I think it's about as good because I think it's mostly based on the original. Except, updated. And that's the kind of design I like to see. I don't like to see this other stuff they have with the Gamera. I don't know why they couldn't have used this suit throughout the whole film. I would have liked this movie and Gamera a lot more if they actually had a good Gamera design. But yeah, I'm still gonna have to give designs a 6 out of 10 because I didn't really like Iris's design. I didn't really like Gamera's main design. The building designs were alright, but I didn't really like that. And the flashback Gamera scene was only like 10 seconds or something, so it wasn't really much to say about that can change the overall score. So next we have fights. The first thing we see is Gauss falling from the sky, which I'm not a huge fan of how they don't really show what happened right before this scene with Gamera and the Gauss, but it's alright I guess. And then Gauss is still falling, but what I don't like is that they keep clipping to random people for no real reason, except this guy. For this guy it's alright because he's my favorite character. The other characters literally have nothing to do with the story. They don't need to show them, and it actually makes what Gamera is doing worse. But I would have liked them to keep Gauss falling the main focus. But Gauss hits the ground, even though they don't show him actually hitting the ground, like Godzilla in King of the Monsters, or Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, or Godzilla vs. Mothra. Instead of actually showing Gauss hit the ground, they show random people who don't have anything to do with the story. But Gamera lands, and at first it kind of looks like he is shooting fire out, which is really cool. But then he shoots smoke out to hide all his arms and legs that are supposed to come out. But it still looks kind of cool. I'll say that, it looks pretty cool. So Gamera lands, and they clip to some random people some more. Then show Gamera, which is a pretty cool shot, even though it is a little too zoomed in. But usually in Monster or Godzilla films they do the zoom-ins, but they also have zoom-outs a lot. And they have a lot of above the ground angles, and not from a person's perspective, because all it does is hide the monsters, which is like if you try to see something from your yard, like a couple miles away, you won't be able to see it. But if you go above the ground, like maybe like helicopter level, you're able to see everything basically. Like for example, in GMK, they Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, they do a similar thing, except they have a zoom out above the ground, showing Godzilla fully. A lot of times. They do this a lot of times. Because they try to show what's happening around Godzilla, and they don't want things to be a limited view so that it doesn't feel real. But in this scene they have a lot of scenes from the ground where a lot of things are hiding Gamera, which I don't really like. But for this scene where Gamera is walking, it is acceptable, kind of. So Gamera slowly walks towards Gauss and then shoots fire at Gauss. We never actually see him kill Gauss. All we see is the damage done to the city, which again I don't like at all. And then they show Gamera with fire around him or something. So let's compare this to GMK, when Godzilla kills Baragon. The first and obvious thing is that I could see Godzilla shooting Baragon, and Baragon dying. The second thing is that there isn't any buildings or anything blocking this amazing scene. They could have done that, but they chose not to. Instead, they chose to create a wonderful scene. So yeah, I don't really like the scene so far, but let's continue. So Gamera walks into the city, which looks awesome. I like how I can actually see Gamera. Then another Gauss comes out of nowhere, and they clip to some people with a shot of Gamera from the ground, which is pretty cool. And these are the scenes I'm talking about. A clear scene with nothing blocking the monster. Then Gauss shoots a laser which hits a building, I think. I don't know, I couldn't really see it. I just have to assume that it did. Then Guile shoots a laser, which does nothing. Then Gamera shoots a lot and misses every time. Unless he was aiming for the people, which at this point I'm not sure. Then fireballs keep getting shot, while Guile dodges them all. I don't really like how they don't actually show Gamera shooting them, but okay. Like, you know, from like a zoom out, they like show Gamera and Gauss from one part of the city and the other part, Gamera trying to shoot him. You know, that would have been really cool. But they just zoom in on their face to save money. Which I can understand, but it makes it feel less like it's actually happening. And it feels more like a YouTube video of someone made like a Gamera versus Gauss. They just clip scenes from two other completely different movies or something. Then Gamera realized how to kill more innocent civilians and Gauss at the same time. Gauss blows up, then a kid says Gamera saves him while they show the city Gamera is just overkilled. Yep, looks like to me that he just saved all these people from a monster that would have just eaten 10 or 20 of them and then fallen asleep. I think that's a fair trade. So then they show Gamera on the TV fly into the sky. So I didn't really like that fight, mostly because of the angles and them not having any faraway shots above the ground. And them not showing Gamera shoot fireballs a lot of times. And it seems like they're coming out of nowhere. And also them not showing what the whole first part of this scene led up to, which was the death of Gauss. Like, they led up the whole thing with him falling, Gamera walking over there, which he could have actually just flown over there. Instead he chose to kill more people. Let's not get into that though, but you know, the thing, it was like really dramatic, and then they just block the whole thing so that you can't see it. It's like he's shooting fire at a building, but it's supposed to be Gauss, and this was supposed to be led up to like a dramatic scene, but they just block everything. And it seemed a lot of times that the fire was just used to cover up everything in the background. It didn't really feel right. It just kind of, like in Shin Godzilla, it was, you know, very useful, but they do this in every single scene, so you can't see anything. And they don't have any good angles of this. People say they're creative angles, but how is zooming up from ground level a creative angle? That's not creative angle. That's just make it hard to see angle. A creative angle is when it actually looks really good and you can see what's happening. That's a creative angle. So then we get to Iris. First thing is baby Iris looks kind of cool with its realistic movements. But I don't like how it's obsessed with the girl. Just feels really creepy. Especially since they don't show what happens here. And I don't mean a cool kind of creepy like the Meganula eating people. I mean the disturbing kind of creepy. But other than that, Iris so far doesn't do anything. But obviously does a lot off screen, since we don't see any of it. Which is the part I don't like. This could have been a very cool scene where the Iris breaks out, you know, kills the girl's family and then escapes. But no, they just left it off screen, which disappoints me. So yeah, so far I don't really like most of the things in the fights and the monster scenes. But then this girl, I think gets dragged by Iris, but I can't really tell. And then a second later, a dead body drops. But this scene shows how Iris drains people's life energy as much as the first scene, which isn't really anything at all. Basically, they showed the girl alive 1 second and then she's gone the next. What would have been cool is if Iris picked up the girl and then they showed his arm around her, at least. But I just don't really like this scene. It doesn't really show Iris's powers like it's supposed to be an explanation scene. What they could have done is they should have had like some electricity effects on the girl, like she's being electrocuted or something, or drained or something. And I think that would have helped make the message more clear. But instead what they did was they just took two pieces of footage. They had one where the girl is alive, and then they had one where the skeleton or whatever it is falls over on the ground. Then the army attacks Iris with machine guns, which I just find pretty funny. It's like if they went after Godzilla with machine guns confidently. The army attacks Iris with machine guns, which I just find pretty funny. It's like if they went after Godzilla with machine guns confidently. I guess since they killed the little Legion monsters that were able to knock out Gamera with handguns, they thought, this monster machine guns, that's gonna get him out. So Iris uses his tentacle to destroy the trees and the soldiers, which look pretty cool. But then Iris does this, which absolutely makes no sense to me at all, and is very confusing. Next, Iris flies into the sky, and Iris shoots lasers at the planes, and the planes dodge it, and then Gamera shows up, and I have no clue what is going on right here at all. I thought the other fight scenes were confusing, but this takes the cake. And I'm not shaking this video in my editing, this is how the movie actually looks like. And they keep going to the radar because honestly, that is the only thing that makes sense in this whole fight scene. Then Gamera hits Iris, and it looks pretty cool, but then they zoom on Iris's arm, I think it is, and then they zoom in on Gamera, and then they show blood all over the screen. I'm not even sure what happened. I mean, if I analyzed it like really detailed, I'd probably be able to understand, but how this scene was shot is not good in any way. It's very confusing and not that good. So missiles hit Gamera, and Gamera gets hurt so much his speed goes down by a lot, which I guess is better than him being knocked out from it, but Then Iris lands, and again they use about level angles with things blocking most of that monster. So Iris walks for a while, and then Gamera realizes he is in this movie. So he cancels his trip to Monster Island and heads towards Iris. Then Gamera's mouth glows, and Iris blocks the balls of fire, which don't really have a source, since they don't show Gamera shooting them. But the deflecting of the fireballs looks pretty good, and the angle is above ground, and I can see what's happening. Besides not seeing Gamera shoot the fireballs, which Gamera was shown to do in 1995 and 1996. So yeah, I like that scene. That was like the perfect scene. That's like the GMK Heisei Godzilla angle that I was talking about right there. That is like a really good angle. But too bad they don't have that in basically any of the other scenes in this movie. So this scene is pretty good so far. Besides Iris not doing much and relying on his tentacles for everything, which is kind of boring to be honest. And Iris doesn't even move his arms. Kind of reminds me of the girl, which just stands there and doesn't do anything. And then Gamera lands, again covering the transition completely, and then they show Gamera, but it's hard to see him. Then in an intense stare down, which kind of reminds me of Godzilla and King Ghidorah, but then they just stand there, and they don't do anything. I'm literally not joking. They zoom in, they zoom out, and they show the sky for literally no reason at all, with no music at all. This literally lasts a full minute where they just standing there, and then they zoom out for no reason. To nothing. They zoom out to nothing for no reason. It's like, what's going on here? They're just staring at each other, and then they zoom out, show the sky. What's going on? Imagine if they did that in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Instead of them, they show the monsters standing there, then they zoom in on their face, and then they zoom out again, and then they zoom in on their face, and then they just zoom in on the sky. It's like, what's going on? If people actually saw that in a Godzilla film, they would be like, oh, that's horrible, that's horrible. And that's what I think of this scene. It's not really that good. And it could have been easily cut for other scenes that would have been a lot better. You didn't need to show the sky. Then all of a sudden, Gamera is on top of Iris, and they clip to people again. Instead of them showing Gamera actually run towards Iris, like they did in Godzilla King of the Monsters, which was a really good scene by the way, they just cut that whole scene right there so that they can have the suit not doing anything. But this scene right here could have been so good. It could have been like the scene in Godzilla Final Wars and King of the Monsters where they charge at each other. But this movie decided to have nothing go on for a whole minute and then kill the whole momentum. Then they show some intense fighting for a second, and with buildings blocking almost everything. To be honest, that was probably one of the best scenes right there in the whole film, just for the fighting. Even though they weren't even really fighting or shooting fire or anything, not really shooting the lasers or anything. Next they show people. Then Gamera all of a sudden falls into a building, or whatever this is, and we don't really clearly see how that happened. So next scene is Gamera gets up and gets impaled. And Gamera decides to celebrate being impaled by hugging Iris in the background. Then Iris pulls his arm out of Gamera, or whatever that was he stabbed him with, I didn't really ever see a good shot of what is on his hands. Then they keep hugging for a while, with them having either ground level angles, where I can't really tell what is going on, or really zoomed in angles on the monsters' faces or behind their shoulders. So the angles are really bad. Gamera Attack of Legion, that one was like, those angles were like really good compared to this film. This film is like if I was like 1 foot away from someone and I was trying to record a fight. That's how good these angles are. It's really confusing. I don't know what's going on most of the time. It doesn't really even feel like much is going on, except them kind of just hugging. So Gamera gets knocked to the ground for some reason. Couldn't tell anything at all. And Iris goes to the girl. Then Gamera stabs Iris' stomach, and Iris stabs Gamera's hand. Which honestly, this is the only scene where I could actually tell what is happening. And it looked kinda cool. Mostly because I could see and understand what was happening. Even though it was zoomed up, it was able to show what was happening, even though it was zoomed in. Then for literally a minute and a half, Gamera stares at Iris, and then stares at his hand. And then does the dumbest thing I've seen a monster do in any film. He literally cuts off his own arm. He had 1 minute and a half to think about this, and the best solution he could think of was cut off his arm. How about cutting off the thing stabbing him, or shooting a fireball at Iris' face? I can see how Godzilla 2002 and Godzilla 2004 were inspired by this to show how Godzilla would actually react. Even the not so smart Godzilla would react. Godzilla 2002 blew off Kiryu's arm knife, and he didn't cut off his own arm, even though he was being stabbed and being shocked. Godzilla 2004 was about to be cut up by Gigan, but then he blew off Gigan's head. And even if they didn't want to have Iris' head blown off, it should push him back enough so that Gamera can free himself. But no, he chooses the worst possible choice, and then Iris shoots a laser or something, and then Gamera blocks it with his cut off arm, and then I see fire or something. I don't really know what's going on. Then they zoom in on something fiery, and then Gamera and Iris, and then the camera's shaking. Then the smoke clears, and Gamera kind of looks like he stabbed Iris. I can't really tell. I don't really know what happened there. And then the screen shakes, and Iris glows, and then the explosion happens, which somehow didn't kill anyone, besides being as big as the whole airport. Then Gamera walks towards the people and drops the girl. Then for literally more than a minute, the lady tries to wake up the girl, and then Gamera roars and wakes her up. And then they show Gamera in a pretty cool angle. This is the only situation where a ground level shot is okay. Is when the monster is interacting with the main characters or the people. Not when they are fighting. When they are fighting, they need to have a lot of wide shots showing what is happening. And close-up scenes are okay, but wide shots of the monsters that are above the ground level by a lot are meant to show what is happening right before or after the close-up shots. Like with this scene from GMK where they show Baragon jumping with a wide shot without anything blocking the view, and then they use a close-up shot of how exactly he bit Godzilla. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is the stuff that GMK did right, but Heisei Gamera Films did not do right, which I think cost the Gamera Films in my opinion. But I'll talk about the rest in a minute. So Gamera walks away, the Gauss are about to attack him, and then the movie ends. Talk about anticlimactic on top of anticlimactic. First they have fights which I couldn't really tell what was going on most of the time. Either they were hugging or nothing was happening, or someone was getting stabbed like 2 times. And then Gamera just one-shots Iris, and then they didn't even show Gamera fight the Gauss at the end. So now we'll talk about the angles. I don't like them, for the reasons I already said. They were very confusing, and I don't like it at all. And nothing really that much is happening. And then Gamera one-shots Iris and the movie ends. The fights weren't really that good at all, and the monster scenes were usually blocked by something, And there were only a handful of scenes where I could see the upper portion of the monsters, and that was the most I could see. And that was only when nothing was happening, and not when they were actually fighting. They did show Gamera once or twice, but not when he was fighting. I don't even know what Iris's legs look like when he's walking. That's how bad the angles are. And without this one scene, I wouldn't even know Iris had legs. I would think he was like a Biollante creature. He's able to move or something. I don't know. Considering everything and how much the bad outweighs the good, which there wasn't much good, I'm gonna have to give it a 2.5 out of 10. There's nothing to get from this movie for me for the fights. They had good effects, which I'm going to go in right now, but the fights just aren't there. They aren't there at all. I'm not able to see anything. So after that, you probably just think I don't like these movies because I don't like the style. But no, GMK had a very similar style to this movie, but the things that make it different is the story that makes complete sense in GMK, even though it is a little bit weird, The characters are really good and relatable. The designs are decent, not my favorite in every area. And the fights have a lot going on every time, and they can be seen very clearly with awesome camera angles that let you see and completely understand what is going on. So yeah, the fights in this movie aren't good, at least for me. You probably, think whatever you want, and they don't have good angles to show you what is actually going on most of the time. So this is the reasons for my rating. I had to go in all the way, because if I just said, my final rating, you guys would have been like, why are you rating it like that? So I gave my reasons. Whether you guys agree with that or not, that's just up to you. Next we have effects. I will say, being completely honest, like I was being before, that the effects in this movie scale from really good to okay, but never really bad or even less than okay, which is a good thing. I'm not talking about angles, only special effects, CGI or practical effects, sometimes. There are some CGI things I don't like that much, but still scales in the okay area, so I will go over them. Gamera's fireballs in the sky look very good. The explosions, while I think they're too slow, they don't look as fake as previous movies, and at best look really realistic. Gauss on fire looks cool. Gamera spinning looks good, but I don't like his transformation. It kind of looks weird, but still okay. The explosions from Gamera's fireball looked cool, but it was too zoomed in for me, and like I said before, I couldn't see Gauss, but pretty overall good with the animation. Gamera in the city looks really cool, and is very good at it. I don't really like how Gauss flying in the skies kind of looks weird with the city they used right there, but it's still okay. I couldn't really even see Gauss's laser hitting the building, but it was okay, I guess, in effects of the laser. Gauss's laser hitting Gamera looked cool, but I think a thing I don't like about Gauss's laser is that it's not defined as much as the other lasers, and doesn't really look like a laser beam. It looks like more like an atomic breath or something. It doesn't look like a laser light beam or something, like King Ghidorah, King Ghidorah's laser light beam. Like they showed in GMK. Like the electricity and stuff, it was very defined. And I think the definedness was missing in this film. As much as saying this, Gamera, killing the civilians looked pretty good in effects. And the explosion after was kind of fast and looked cool. But I think it was still kind of slow. Gamera being in front of a building looked pretty cool, but it didn't really look like the fireball went through the building. It looked more like he just shot a little bit far out the building, and it didn't go all the way through. Gauss being exploded looked cool. I don't really like the city on fire, it just kind of looks weird for some reason. Maybe it's the green screen effect. I don't think it was the green screen effects were done as well as in other films. But most of it is okay, but it just kind of looks weird. Iris in his baby form looks pretty good, and still has some realistic movements. But Iris's arms look kind of stiff to me in the beginning stage, but overall okay, even though it doesn't really move that much. I don't really like Iris's animation right here though, kind of looks fake, and the movements are kind of weird. Later on, the editing in this scene doesn't really look that good, but it's okay. Iris destroying the soldiers looks good. Then Iris heads into the sky, and I have to say I like the animation of Iris right here. It looks very good, with my only problem being the clouds looking kind of metallic and more like animation than actual clouds. But still very good, and also I'm pretty sure the moon isn't this big, and it isn't that close to Earth. But, you know, still very good. Unfortunately, they have a scene right after this that doesn't look as good. Iris here looks very stiff and looks worse than a PS2 intro animation. Gamera flying next to the jets looks very cool, but it makes his head look very small. But the reflection of Gamera and everything looks good. I guess they wanted to hide the animation, so they just shook the screen a lot, so I can't really judge this one for effects. Gamera spinning around looks pretty cool. It doesn't really look too realistic in the animation, but it looks alright. The missiles hitting Gamera looks good, but when they show Gamera again, it doesn't look that good. Then they show some animation for Iris that doesn't really look good at all and looks very stiff. Then they show Iris coming down from the clouds, which just highlights how bad this last animation looked, with this one looking really good. Iris deflecting the fire looks very cool. I don't really like how it looks when Gamera flies into the city. For one, he looks kind of weird in his movements, and second, he doesn't look like he's going that fast at all. The fire they have right here looks a little weird, but it's okay. I don't really like all the fire, but it's okay. Iris impaling Gamera looks good, and a lot better than what Legion did in the last film. Actually, it looks like he got impaled this time. When they have Iris in front of people, sometimes it looks a lot like miniatures, and other times it looks very well edited. So that looks pretty good. The only scene that didn't look good was when the eye thing was watching the girl, but Gamera saving the girl could be seen from the white light, so it was pretty good. Iris stabbing Gamera looks pretty good. Gamera's fireball, even though it's not really well defined, looks pretty good still. The fire thing, whatever, couldn't really see what was going on, but it looked pretty good at animation. The explosion from Iris looks very good. A little too slow, but it looks really good. Gamera looking at the people looks okay. Doesn't look amazing or really good, but it's okay. The Gauss flying looks very good, except it looks a little animated, but it's okay. And Gamera, the city on fire looks kind of good, but the fire looks a little bit weird and added in. But the fire that comes on screen looks really cool. So considering everything, I don't see how I can't give this area less than a 9 out of 10. But considering everything overall, to be honest, I don't really like this movie much at all. And these are just my thoughts on the Heisei Gamera films. You probably feel differently, but I listed exactly my reasons why I don't like each area I listed. But in my opinion, I don't think that these movies are that good. And having good effects doesn't cover having really bad fights, bad angles, making them confusing, and having some of the story confusing and lacking, and having not really that good characters. And I didn't really like the plot that much, even though it made sense, kind of. But it wasn't really that interesting, and Gamera's change at the end didn't match the rest of the movie and what they were highlighting earlier. So these are my thoughts on this movie. And the only reason I went into this much detail about the movies were because people said, you know, they're the best monster movies, and I don't really think that they are close to being that. But these are only my thoughts on the movies. I'm not stating most of these things like they're fact. The only fact is that this is what I think of the movies and nothing else. But I'm not saying if someone else says that these are the best monster movies that they're being dishonest. They might not have anything to back that up besides preference, but still for them, that is still them being honest about their feelings about the movies. But I just feel like most people shouldn't be stating this like it's a fact. But, you know, they're fans of the movie, so I'm not going to be like, oh, it's not, so you can't enjoy it, whatever, like some other people did with the Godzilla films. But for me, I'm going to be honest about what I think about this film, and about every area. If I just didn't like Heisei Gamera, which, to be honest, I don't, but if I just don't like it and then I'm going to let that roll my judgment for everything, you'd better believe that animation would not be 9 out of 10, because for most of the Godzilla films, I didn't have 9 out of 10, which I already figured out the score for all the other Godzilla films that I'm going to review. Basically, probably like 10%, maybe like 5% have a 9 out of 10. This is like one of the only films that has a 9 out of 10. It has really good effects. I just don't think that the other things match the quality of the effects. I don't feel like the fights match the quality of the effects. I don't think the camera angles or the story and the characters match the quality of the effects. So yeah, that's about it. I just went into this whole long, probably like 50-minute, probably like an hour by now, hour-long explanation to explain why I rated these things certain ways, so that you wouldn't be confused or be like, oh, you're just hating it for no reason or something. I'm not hating it. I'm just sharing my thoughts on it and why I think a certain way about it. What I think it did good and what I think it didn't do as good. So yeah, this is probably going to be like a huge video. But if you want to discuss anything after, I'll try to answer what you say in the comments. So if you want to discuss this further, we can do it there. So thanks for watching and see you later.